Welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for episode 3 of the Software Testing Happy Hour. Once again, I'm your host, Brent Jenkins. Joining me again today, Sneha Cruz, Director of Support Services. Sneha, I do have to let you know, since our resident beer snob, Matt Kubal, is not joining us today, that I am passing those honors over to you. Temporarily.
We should have gone with vodka then. We'll stick to the vodka.
Again with the vodka.
All right, cool.
In this episode, we're going to be talking about, the trend right now is really companies moving towards DevOps. So we're really going to just kind of discuss why that's so important and some of the steps you can do to get there, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Definitely the trending topic of 2018 and where everyone's saying it's going to go. So
Right. But before we do that, I do have to thank our sponsor, Checkpoint Technologies, for making this all happen. Checkpoint Technologies helps organizations like yours deliver higher quality applications to market faster through professional services like staff augmentation, consulting, training, and more, and best-of-breed software partner solutions like Micro Focus, Atlassian, and more. With that, I'm going to pass it over to our temporary resident beer snob.
That should be something other than a beer snob since I'm not
Beer
a beer
wench? Is that it? No.
I'll take it. I'll go with it.
All right. To announce the beers that we're going to be sampling, and I do want to point out, though, this is our bonus beer. This will be what we'll be cheersing to at the end in our software testing happy hour
If we don't
glasses.
drink it prior to then, we'll see.
Yeah, okay. And this is the order we're going to be sampling them.
So the theme we went with this week, instead of doing a specific brewery, we decided to go with a type of beer. So we went with barrel-aged beers. Personally, one of my favorites, even though they think it's wheat. It's bourbon-aged. So the first one we'll be sampling is the Magic Hat Wee Heavy Champ. It is a Scotch ale. Brent killed the bottle before this, but we have a little sampling.
A little pre-gaming. Thanks for pointing that out.
No problem. That's what I'm here for. Then we've got the Thirsty Dog Wolver Wee Heavy Ale. It's a bourbon ale.
Okay.
Then we got Founder's Dirty. Do I have to bleep myself out?
No, you can say it. It's all
Dirty
right.
Bastard, which is a Scotch ale.
Monetized.
I also really like it. And then we've got Innocent Gun, a bourbon-aged dark ale. And lastly, the Kentucky Bourbon Ale, which is very popular here for bourbon ale, because I'm a fan of bourbon ales, and that's the one you get everywhere. So
awesome.
there we have it.
Thanks,
so we're gonna go back to the beer timer, right?
We are. 5 minutes on the clock.
Go.
All right. So, just to kick it off, how the whole trend kind of took place and started. Oh, I should probably sample it before we get started.
Yeah. It's very important to drink before you talk.
Even though I've already sampled it clearly since you pointed that out. In 2011, Mark Anderson famously said, "Software is eating the world." At this point, it's an iconic statement, but it talked about how, software was changing the way organizations, every company needed to become a software company, essentially.
Right.
He revised that statement a few years later and saying that software is programming the world, and the fact that, I took that almost as the software is almost driving the business decisions. Really.
Correct. I would agree.
And then recently, a person named Steve Denning wrote an article saying that Agile is eating the world. And I think the whole point of that really was like,
you have to be moving software quicker and meeting your consumer wants a lot quicker and at a faster speed, and that's where Agile kind of came into play in general anyways.
Right.
So
it's almost the point that at this point in time, organizations have to embrace Agile.
Right.
It's not even like, okay, that's a cool trend. I can see people. It's like you have to, or you're falling.
It's almost
behind.
like the subheading to software is eating the world, or software is programming the world, because you can't be Agile without software. I guess you can, kind of.
Right.
But.
And it kind of spoke a lot about how a lot of companies are using their software as their competitive edge nowadays. Companies like like Starbucks. Coffee's a dime a dozen. They set themselves apart.
Coffee shops you see.
Yeah, they set themselves apart by their software and their inside their chains. When a new product is released or there's an update to it, their software updates throughout all their local chains to time the brewing of that perfectly to the T in every location every time with no mistakes.
Even their mobile app is a huge piece. You can order your coffee to go every morning and just have it ready for you without paying anything, because it's all within your account.
Yeah, so it's like,
I think Nike's another good example with the, what are those things you put in your shoe coats.
Do they still do the chips
don't
now?
know.
I used to
That's
have
the
the
thing,
Nike,
yeah. I
but
mean,
now
they
they have
started
the
that a
Nike
while
app,
ago,
and you know the
yeah.
Apple Watch has the Nike edition.
Right,
So it's like that's what they use to set themselves apart in the running shoe
Athletic
industry
world, yeah.
is their software that does. So yeah, I mean, it really is driving the way
Right.
businesses.
And that's across spaces, whether it's healthcare, whether it's retail,
Right.
whether it's a true IT company, pharmaceutical, everything, no matter what the space is, you name it. And
Cars, I mean, you talk about
yeah,
Tesla. I mean,
self-driving cars, everything.
some of those Tesla cars have like millions of lines of code in them. I mean,
Right.
that's, you know.
Everyone's having to make the investment in software, whether it's with their own software department or outsourcing it. Even
Yep.
small businesses that just have a website. You have to have a very responsive website, so that's like Wix and things like that come into play, right? So
Yeah, and so now, I think back in 2011 when Mark said that, you know, I think a lot of people realized that and they started making that transformation. But the problem now is because now everybody's trying to be a software first company. Now it's about who can be a better software first
right.
company. So that's when you start talking about the Agile and the DevOps movements and who can release faster and
better,
you know,
and,
better, higher quality and faster,
right.
essentially.
And
is the
with
goal.
more features and things users want. That's
Exactly.
a huge piece of that. So.
You know, it goes back to, you know, just looking at some notes here, a recent state of software study, it reported, you know, I think going back to Steve Dennings about Agile eating the world. Yeah, I think most organizations, at least somewhere in that organization, they've adopted some form of Agile,
Whether
right?
it's a small team within it, doing
Right.
it organically on their own, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and this state of software report really kind of proved that in reporting 77% of companies are using Agile in some sort
Yeah.
of way. And then 78% as well are using some form of Git. Yeah, but I mean,
Right.
after Agile, what's next? It's DevOps, and that's why we're
DevOps,
having
yeah.
that conversation, and not just for small teams, for enterprise teams as well.
This just came to me, and I know we've never actually discussed this, but
Did you
do
put
you
a light
think
bulb over your head?
it did? But I wonder how much of Agile and DevOps transformations really due to smartphones and having mobile apps and that user feedback pretty instantly. And like you go to the App Store, and how many people are driven off their metrics in the App Store
Right.
to really sweat. So
I mean, it is. I mean, it's.
just came to me. Just
I mean, the immediate
like-
the immediate feedback, but I mean that's the case in everything. I mean, if you you know, if you go to a Starbucks and your drink isn't the way you want it to, you're going to complain, and they're going to get that immediate feedback as well,
Right.
which funnels up into. So I mean, I think that's the case. Oh, our beer clock
doesn't buzz.
it locked.
We did just finish the 5 minutes.
Did we finish the 5
Yeah.
minutes? So what are we at to next?
We're gonna go the Thirsty Dog Wolver Wee Heavy Ale Bourbon.
Thirsty
You
Dog.
didn't even finish yours. You didn't like it?
No, it was actually very tasty.
I mean, it's Scotch. It's always tasty.
Yeah.
All right. So back to software.
All right, back to software. Well, hang on. Let me try it first. Ooh.
More than Wee Heavy?
That one's
heavy?
That one's wee heavy. Wow.
That's a bourbon ale.
I was not expecting that. I gotta be honest.
I'm glad I watched you drink it first, so I can be conscious of my face when I drink this.
I think it's just going from this one to that one. It kind of caught me off guard a little bit. It's not bad.
No.
It just was definitely a turn.
It's quite sweet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay.
All right. So DevOps. You know, what is really DevOps all about? It's about breaking down those silos between dev, ops, and even business, you know, the business side, customer service, marketing,
Support,
HR,
everybody.
everybody.
Everybody has to come together as a team and work together to produce that high quality software that
Right.
us spoiled consumers expect and want.
We have become very
you know?
spoiled. Yeah.
Especially like that whole, if your website doesn't load in 5 minutes, I'm out.
Yeah, I think it's not even, no, it's not even 5
5
minutes. 5
seconds,
seconds.
sorry.
Yeah, I was about
That's
to
what I
say
meant in my
5
head.
minutes. Wow, you're very patient.
I can't even drink a beer in 5 minutes. I mean,
So I think it's become popularly known that, you know, I think a lot of it came out of the Phoenix Project as well as the DevOps Handbook, the
those are
DevOps.
those Gene Kim books, right?
Yeah, and a handful of others I can't think of off the top of my head, but Gene Kim I know was on both of them. But it's kind of underpinned with those three basic principles, which are based off of Gene Kim's 3 ways. The first one is workflow. What do you think they mean by workflow in the principles?
The flow of work.
Thank Very
glad to expand on that for you. No, it's just making sure that everyone's kind of open to that workflow and collaborating together on that workflow instead of, like you said, breaking down those silos. If you have workflow that's going from one team, then stopping, waiting to be picked up from the next team, stopping, waiting, it's definitely taking more time.
Right.
Versus having a seamless kind of flow between teams.
It's making the work visible across all teams,
Right.
Limiting that work in progress and reducing the handoffs.
That's what I was saying. And
yeah, and it goes back to those silos. It's about trying to limit the urge to just throw your work over the wall and say, okay, it's yours now. You own it now. It has nothing to do with me.
When we're building a train route through that wall.
Knocking down the wall.
I just wanted to put a hole in the wall. I want to keep the wall there.
Don't knock a hole in our wall. It's a solid brick. And a lot of times it's not only about not throwing that work over the fence, but a lot of times the person on the other side has no context.
It's super
it's
sweet.
Wee heavy, right?
Wee bit sweet.
It's wee heavy. All right. Well, the principle number 2 is amplified feedback. Fast feedback, catching those failures early before they make it too far down, right? I think
it's where I think both testing and customer feedback play a huge role. I'm from a support background and software testing background, right? That's kind of the place that resonates most with me because you want to get that feedback faster. So again, going back to those silos, you don't want to have that silo between your support team who's finding issues and bugs to take a while to get back down to dev, right? So we want that continuous flow and no walls.
Right. Now, a lot of it, too, I think, is about, when those incidents do happen, it's about swarming on them quickly and resolving them. And I think a lot of that has to do with, the software that's out there now that you can track all those issues that have occurred. You can build those knowledge bases.
To be able to reduce them faster.
Yeah, so when something happens, you can just do your quick search through Confluence or something like that and find all these articles that may resolve your issues.
Was it in our first episode where we talked about some of those, the recovery rate?
Faster time to recovery and stuff.
Huge compared to some
it's
of
really high. I'm not sure. I know I put a couple of stats in here. I'm not sure we get to it a little bit faster, or a little bit later. But being able to resolve those incidents faster, and not only resolve them, but then learn from them. What really happened here, and how can we make it not happen again?
Right.
Or if it does happen,
can we get by faster? That was the other thing, just like with testing, you're not testing to find 100% no bugs. You're testing to reduce it, and you're never going to have 100%. We're never going to prevent failure from ever happening.
Right.
And that goes back to the being anti-fragile, being able to recover from failures quicker and learn from those and make it more efficient the next time you do fail. Yeah,
we've talked about being anti-fragile in previous episodes.
I'm glad this 5 minutes is over on this beer.
Not a fan of it?
I mean, it's not bad. It's like almost like a dessert drink. It's very sweet to me.
I wouldn't drink it normally.
No, definitely not. What's up next? All right,
so what's up next?
Founders Dirty Bastard
Scotch Ale.
I have had this one before, and I don't mind it. I like this one. You might not like this one.
No.
To be honest, let's see your reaction on this.
Am I going first again?
It's got that really good Scotch aftertaste.
Yeah, it's much better than that last one.
Yeah.
That Thirsty Dog was not so good. Not so good.
Thirsty.
All right, so where are we at? We're at principle number 3, continuous experimentation, having a culture of learning. And I think we touched a little bit on that with the amplified feedback and the fact that about being anti-fragile. And not only that, it's I think a lot of it's about not being afraid to take those risks. Know you're probably going to fail, but be able to learn from that.
And recover quicker, yeah. And I think that's a huge thing we see now, too. The people that are taking these risks and doing things that haven't been done yet, whether or not they do a great job at it or not, that's a huge, like Kickstarters, right?
It's a step forward.
It's kind of what entices you and makes you want to kind of be there and learn with them and grow with them.
That's actually a good point. I like that you brought the Kickstarter up because, I mean, a lot of times you see these Kickstarters for these devices or whatever it may be, and you're like, wow, that's really innovative. I know it's probably not going to be the most reliable thing in the world, but I want to be on board early
Exactly.
because it's exciting.
And
It's
you
something
find people
new.
doing that with companies that are software first.
Right.
You know, like,
Instead of waiting until everything is perfectly done, it's all polished out. You know, actually, I just pre-ordered it's a device called Arsenal. It's an AI learning device for it mounts on your hot shoe of your camera, and it basically evaluates your surroundings and all that, and it tells you the best settings to use and all that. And
I mean, that's what my iPhone's for.
it's amazing. Anyway.
Yeah, no, but
it may be buggy.
First generations are going to be buggy.
It's probably going to be buggy.
With that
it's just like the first people that got the Apple Watch.
Or Google Glass.
Right? It's like,
all those.
You know, there's definitely that strong market for those people that want that stuff early, even if it is a little bit buggy, even if it doesn't work perfectly.
And I think that goes back to what they said about software's program. Yeah, you make those leaps and bounds early on, even if they're not perfect. You're going to build your...
It sets you apart.
Yep.
You know, like, I feel like maybe 10 years ago, Apple was like that. You know, Apple was innovating. And now I feel like they play it safe a little more often, and they just barely make small adjustments and stuff. But they used to take these big risks.
But now you have all their competitors taking these big risks to get up there.
And playing catch up.
Exactly.
100%.
Same thing happens across the board in all sorts of industries.
Right. Yep.
But yeah.
So we kind of talked about the 3 principles, but what are organizations getting out of this? What are they getting out of implementing DevOps? What are some stats? You know, I know we talked about it in a previous episode. We talked about the Puppet State of DevOps report, but I just kind of want to touch on a few of those stats again, since we're kind of devoting this whole thing to DevOps. In 2017. Now, remember, 2016 the numbers were higher.
Right.
Than 2017, but also
you had more people adapting it for the first time versus people that have been playing with it, using it, or
people that have done some of the stuff. Okay, my organization is already doing continuous integration or continuous, delivery, but not continuous deployment and that sort of thing.
And when you take those smaller steps, you don't see as significant of a change because you've already implemented part of it.
Exactly. Like we've already adapted Agile, but now we're bringing Ops into it, so you're not seeing as big
you're
as
not going
just
straight
went
from waterfall to DevOps.
Exactly.
And going, holy cow.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a lot of what 2016 stats were. But 2017 stats are still very impressive. 46 times more frequent deployments, a 440 time faster lead times for change, and then 5 times lower change failure rates. Those are big numbers.
Huge numbers. I mean, 440 times faster times to changes, like that's bug fixes, enhancement requests. That's crazy.
Right. Well, and that's one of the things I kind of wanted to bring up was with all this, with being able to get to that, being able to deploy more and having higher quality and faster lead times for change and all that. What does that end up getting you? Other than just faster to the market, what does that get you?
Greater customer satisfaction, I would think, would be a big one that's not always talked about, but everyone knows that's really what drives everybody. Because better customer satisfaction drives better revenue, better growth, better everything else that people care about.
And when you have more time, when you're spending less time on all these fixes and stuff, you have more time to experiment more and implement those new features that you wanted to. But you just are like, I'm never gonna get to this.
I'm too busy fixing broken crap all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Or I have to wait for it to go through its flow and take 3 weeks to test one simple fix versus.
Or I got to wait 3 weeks for somebody else to do their part,
so I can do mine.
So I can do my next step instead of just being a
trickle down.
Exactly.
Everyone do it at the same time.
Our beer clock is done.
It is.
What's
next? When you're at 9%. Next up. Oh, I didn't get very far on that one. I'm disappointed.
We kind of are getting less and less.
The next up is Innocent Gun Bourbon Aged Dark Ale.
I was actually pretty excited about this one.
Yeah,
so I'm going to try it.
Compared to the rest.
I know, that's why I was excited about it.
Oh, that's good.
That's tasty. That's very good.
That is good.
Mm-hmm.
I do like the Wee Heavy too, but this one's
We'll
good.
talk about our favorites in the end, but let's not get ahead of ourselves.
I feel like we're going to have to chug these at the end too.
Well, no, we have our bonus beer, right?
This is true.
Yeah, I think what you were saying though is all of those things, all those statistics that you're getting and all that basically lead to what we kind of were talking about in the beginning, that competitive edge. Mm-hmm. It gives your organization a competitive edge because you're delivering faster with higher quality. You're getting new features to market before your competitors are. It gives you,
even if they fail, you're still giving consumers what they want quicker.
And it's been proven time and time again in statistics and surveys and all that a customer would rather have an imperfect product now than a perfect product 6 months from now.
I don't even think you need statistics or survey to tell you that.
Yeah, it's obvious.
Sometimes you drive up on the road and you're like, oh, there's a gas station on the left, and I'm not going to go there. I'll drive till I run out till I get to there on the right. Ask Brent, I've done that a few times.
And you have a hybrid car, which is really sad. You run out of gas with a hybrid car.
Just once ever in my life.
Okay.
I do drive a hybrid.
So eco-friendly. And finally, I just kind of wanted to talk about the steps to get to that, to get to DevOps. You know, and it goes back to those 3 principles, but how do you implement that into steps? Well, I think we've talked about it a few times on here. You know, it really starts with that culture, right? You know,
culture. Bringing
in those 3 principles, the principles of making work more visible, amplifying feedback, and continuous experimentation. You know, is when incidents happen in your organization, does it lead to a bunch of finger pointing, or does it lead to a learning experience?
And ownership, I would say. Everyone takes
shared ownership,
right? Everyone has pride and takes ownership, and you're contributing to a team. It's not, hey, that's their fault. They didn't do what they need to do on that.
Doing the blame game.
Right. It's the changing the culture of working as a real team. I feel like there was a, you know, I would say there's departments that you feel that way, and then there's other ones that are very segregated.
There are.
And
it's kind of back to breaking down those silos.
Right.
I think one of the things, there's a quote by, I forgot his name. I'll have to throw it into the description of this video. But from Amazon, it's the run what you build.
Right, run what you build.
And the idea there is you take responsibility for it. You know, instead of the dev team developing these apps and then throwing it over to ops and saying, it's your problem now, you know, having that shared sense of responsibility. Right. You know, it builds stronger teams and happier customers.
I agree.
Effective communication, that kind of goes back to that as well.
But being just more collaborative in general is a huge thing. There's, I want to say, I don't know what term to use here, but you see so many software teams or even just IT teams or even just the encompassing of all of that. They work very individualized still versus spread across it. You know, with being in testing, you see performance testers, functional testers, and they're very separated.
Yeah, even in the testing organization.
There, they separate themselves out versus, hey, we need to make sure this all works together and we're all going to be accountable for each other and things like that. Like, as hippie tree-hugging that sounds...
It makes for better functioning teams. It does. It really does. Okay, and then the step number 2 after you get down the culture, which I really think that's probably the hardest bit for most organizations. I don't think that's as big of a struggle for new organizations. These legacy organizations that have been doing it away. The enterprise, they've been doing it the same way, and there's so many hands in the cookie jar.
And so many people to be accountable
So many people with voices and opinions and stuff. It's really hard to change that culture and get that leadership buy-in that you really do need.
And I know we talked about this before too, how it used to, you know, and going back to software testing, the testing center of excellence used to be the whole thing, and now it's, what is it? Something, but it's like diversified centers that all streamline up to the same, but everyone holds individual teams that are cross-collaborating from the lower level before it gets up.
Yep.
I can't remember. Anyways. I keep bringing it up, and I never have it.
Yeah. One of these days you'll get it.
Oh, if we didn't have beer involved, maybe. No, probably not. I take that back.
So after the culture change and all that, it's about those practices. You know, developing, moving towards. If you haven't moved towards, you know, agile, you got to master agile first. You can do agile without DevOps, but you can't do DevOps without agile.
It's funny. I've said that once recently, and for the first time, somebody's like, "No, you can." And I didn't have time to go into the conversation because I would love to know why. So I guess that would be a good comment to bring in. If you don't agree with that statement, I would love to know why, because...
Yeah, I don't see how you can truly get to a DevOps state without...
some agile principles behind it.
Exactly.
You can definitely be agile without being DevOps. I don't think you can disagree with that. But
right. And then after that, I think it's about the DVCSs, the decentralized version control systems.
Right. That's always a question. The biggest difference between a centralized version control system and the DVCS, and that's going to be branching.
Right. I'm definitely not a developer, but is it branching or branching and merging? Pull requests, is that part of?
Also, but you can branch. You can pull out pieces of it versus the entire trunk. Think of it as a tree.
Gotcha.
I'm not a developer either, but that's my analogy there.
And then after that,
very low level analogy on that one.
And then after that, it's about, and again, I say after that. I'm not actually meaning these have to be in a sequential order, but these are good steps to get going in the right direction. But the last one,
and some help others, and others help.
Right.
Culture is the one you have to produce on your own. I mean, your practices and tools might help your culture a little bit, but your culture is really a people project.
Right, 100%. And there's some great team playbooks out there and stuff to help you kind of get going on that. Where there's always you can bring in companies to do DevOps, transition assessments and stuff like that. Not that we do that or anything, but we do. But finally, the continuous integration to continuous delivery. Mm-hmm. Right, you gotta get to that point, and then once you get there, I guess once you get there, then you can get to the
you can't do continuous deployment without delivery and
exactly. So correct me if I'm wrong, but are you refilling? You ran out?
I did.
Okay.
We had to take a moment. That was a terrible pour.
That was awful pour.
Terrible pour.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but we talk about continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous deployment. The main difference between the continuous delivery and continuous deployment is
a push
in
button.
Delivery, that deployment is a manual step.
Correct.
Whereas in deployment, it's not.
Continuous deployment is not correct. It's all automated.
It's all automated.
Your builds pass, everything's good, your testing pass, and your release manager's like, yep, go, it automatically deploys.
Got it. And then finally, after you've gotten, the culture, the best practices with the either agile, DVCSs.
I guess you're going to drink one of the bad beers. Sorry, go ahead.
And that's all right. After that, the final step really is the tools. It's about having the right tools in place. Right. And there's so many out there, it's ridiculous.
There is. And one thing just to point out is so many people think, okay, I'm in this organization, I'm coming in new, I want to revamp us to be DevOps, I'm just going to put these tools in place and we'll figure it out.
Right.
Yeah, you can't really do that.
You can't throw tools on top of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Your culture and practices kind of have to be defined, and those kind of tell you where to go with your tools. Like tools can,
that's a good point.
And if you only have a rough idea of your practices, that's fine. Those tools will help shape your practices.
Right.
And they can definitely help shape your culture as well. But you have to have at least some starting points on the culture and practice thing before you throw in tools in. That's such a common thing. Even in the waterfall world, people are like, I'm just going to put a tool in place and that's going to make us.
I think that's probably one of the biggest issues or problems, or mistakes, I guess, that we see organizations do is just, this tool's going to solve all my problems.
Right. And it's the same in anything in the world, right? I want to be a carpenter. I'm going to buy all these tools and I'll just know how to be a carpenter.
Well, it's like
I don't know if that counts.
That's like my wife and I. We were at a park recently, and you see it was because it was shortly after Christmas. You're walking around, you're seeing all these people doing photo shoots, and they've got like the bottom of the barrel DSLR cameras, and it's like, oh, you got this fancy
photography.
you got this new camera. Suddenly, you're a photographer. I got a nice camera, that's going to make me a good photographer, but it's about the composition and the lighting and that, all that stuff.
Artistic point of view.
It's the same sort of deal. The tools aren't going to fix it. You got to learn.
I'm going to need a unicycle and I'm going to join the circus to be a circus unicycler.
Let us know how that goes.
It'd break my everything in a moment. So yeah, but I mean, I definitely think that if you were going to say that they come in a sequential order, tools are going to be your kind of last point. Yeah, they'll help you, but you really, the culture, and I think even talking to organizations, they might have great practices put in place and the tools put in place, but if you don't get your team to buy in and that culture to change and that mindset to change,
Right.
you're not going to be the next, not that you want to be, but the next Netflix or Amazon that's doing
200 deployments today.
ridiculous amounts of deployments today.
Well, it's a good point, because when you talk about the three steps, the culture, the practices, and the tools, that is definitely a sequential order. But within the practices, it's definitely not. The going Agile, CI/CD, CIDD,
Right.
and DVCS.
Right.
Those don't have to be.
Right.
But the steps in general, they really do.
Yeah,
If you wanna
they
do
have
it
a little
correctly.
bit give and away. They have a little bit give to each other, and one
Right.
might help the other. But you definitely need to address culture first.
Culture first. It's bonus beer time.
Bonus beers. That sounds good. Man, yeah, we apparently did not like the Founders or the Thirsty Dog. Thirsty Dog was my least favorite, that's for sure.
Was it? Oh, well, while I'm pouring the bonus beer, let's talk about our favorites. What
Okay.
was your favorite?
So I actually really liked Innocent Gun, but the Magic Hat, because I like the Scotch ale, and that had a really good Scotch flavor. Not gonna lie. Is that weird?
No, it's not weird,
I like
actually.
vodka. I like Scotch. I don't like beer. I'm just kidding.
I think you're in the wrong. I think you're in the wrong video series.
Let's
then
just put it this way: I'll drink anything. Send vodka my way.
I definitely think that.
Yours was the Innocent Gun, wasn't it? You didn't even try the Kentucky bourbon, but it's very light. You might not like it.
It's. I do think it's a close between the Innocent Gun and the Magic Hat. Hang on.
And this Magic Hat, just so everyone knows, I think most people are probably familiar with Magic Hat. They do 9. They do a lot of IPAs.
Nine's a good one,
right? This is one of their collaboration brews with.
Oh, really? I didn't actually realize that.
When I was buying them, the guy told me this is collaboration brew, but doesn't say with who.
That's interesting.
He did tell me it was collaboration brew.
It's very good.
Otherwise, the guy at Luke and Liquors is lying to me. Thanks, Luke and Liquors.
I think the Innocent Gun's probably my favorite, but
Yeah.
the Magic Hat's definitely a close second.
Yeah.
Bonus beer and sign-off time. That's all we have for today.
Mm-hmm.
Normally we do the recommendations and that sort of stuff, but since we're going only 2 deep today, we're going to have another episode for you guys out pretty soon after this. It'll be a little...
Our beer snob will return.
Our beer snob will return. We'll have a little more for you, touch on a handful of topics like we normally do, but we still wanted to put something out because we thought it'd be fun.
Right. We just wanted a reason to drink at work. Who doesn't?
It's possible. With that, cheers.
Cheers.
We're
Thanks
out.
for joining.
See you next time. That's good.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah.